Thanks largely to R2-D2 and C-3PO, interest in robots was rekindled in a massive way in the late 1970s. Not since Forbidden Planet and Lost in Space had robots been at the forefront of pop culture. With technology having advanced significantly at the dawn of the 1980s, toy manufacturers weren't simply able to make toys that looked like robots, but now they could make actual robots. Inspired by the working robots of the era, such as Topo and Hero 1, which were regular fixtures at science museums across the United States, toy makers wanted to make actual programmable robots for consumers and children. Real robots were an adult hobby, and many magazines provided the information and kits to build these now primitive robotic constructs. And it would be one of these programmable robots that would inspire a very unique line of toys.
We gotta get back to the past, to the 20th century. Digging through the bubble wrap into your memories. Back was the collector, he's protecting what we find. Relentless heavy metals keep us safe through time. RetroBlasting.
This is not a toy.
Just the corners of your mind. RetroBlasting. The stuff you love since you were 9. We're blasting into the past to see what thrill still lasts. RetroBlasting.
Tomy was the most notable commercial toy manufacturer that attempted to provide right-out-of-the-box robots, their most famous being the Omnibot 2000, which at $600 was never a part of many children's toy collections. However, another unlikely candidate to step into the ring was Ideal Toys. The company had been in business since 1907, mainly making dolls, including their famous Shirley Temple doll in the 1930s and the infamous Betsy Wetsy. Ideal was also behind the Evel Knievel toys and a line of wind-up robots called Zeroids. In 1984, they made a programmable robot named Max Steel that stood about 2 feet tall and could carry soda cans and tool around your house thanks to a programmable remote that you could use to input commands. At the high price of $600, only about 5,000 of these robots were made. But the hype was such that Ideal wisely decided to build a smaller action figure line around Max. Named Robo Force, the toy line consisted of 10 characters, 3 vehicles, and 1 central playset. It ticked all the boxes for an 80s action figure line, yet at the same time it stood apart from the other properties. Where Transformers, GoBots, and Voltron were robot toy lines where the robots transformed into vehicles and other objects, and Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe were traditional action figure lines where vehicles were provided for the characters to drive around in, Robo Force is a hybrid of these ideas. It's a robot toy line where the robots don't transform, but vehicles are provided for them to ride around in. The figures themselves attempted to be innovative with the suction cup bottoms and the tubular crushing action arms. Unfortunately, the end result of these innovations were limitations for the toys. Robo Force is the definition of an inaction figure. No legs to pose, and warning notes coming with the figures discouraging any posing with the arms as the plastic tubes were fragile and break under strain. Ideal's efforts to individualize the robots achieves mixed results. Different colors help somewhat, but 9 out of 10 of them have the same general silhouette. Only Max Steel has a unique lower body. The rest of the figures share the same suction cup, gray for the heroes and black for the villains. Max's unique design is probably due to him already being a full-scale robot, so they just miniaturized the shell for the Robo Force figure. It is refreshing to see how unique these figures are when compared to other toys of the period. Robo Force figures are very useful when mixed into your other lines. They could be Cobra's latest weapons against the Joes, or an alien race that lands on Eternia. However, their actual mythology isn't as compelling, and so Robo Force doesn't stand out in the toy bin like it should. Each toy came with a mini-comic. There were 4 in all, each with simple stories. At a high level, the mini-comics all deliver the same message. The good guys are super good and will destroy evil at any cost with their amazing weapons, so don't cross them. The bad guys are super evil and they're going to destroy good at any cost with their extra evil weapons. Those weapons they brag about are little more than stick-on plastic nubbins. Occasionally, one looks like a drill or a laser gun, but for the most part, they look like shards of random nothing. The figure boxes contain a little bio of each character's personality. Despite Ideal trying to flesh out the characters, the descriptions are rather shallow and just generate more questions than answers. For example, Enemy is called the Dictator, while the leader, Hundred, is the Conqueror. Shouldn't that be flipped around? Hundred is the leader of the baddies, so isn't he the dictator by default? The box says Enemy never follows orders and goes too far. Okay, so why hasn't Hundred vaporized him by now? Blazer is apparently crazy, which it seems would explain his willingness in the cartoon special to set a guy's head on fire. There's another bot named Vulgar, and it describes his drill as being on the back of his head, even though the box art and the cartoon have it on the front as his face. Cruel's antenna are apparently so he can keep up with Hundred's latest strategies. So where does that leave Vulgar and Enemy? Do they not have Wi-Fi either? Does Hundred provide them with thumb drives so they can update their firmware directly through USB? Some of the robots have unique features like zipline hooks, storage compartments for weapons, hidden weapon pods, and even water blasters. The most unique robot is Soda, which stands for State of the Art. The box says he's the most trusted senior counselor, which would run counter to the cartoon canon of Coptor being the oldest robot. Soda has this awesome targeting system thingy that pops out of his head, and even a radar dish accessory. He's certainly the most robotic of all the figures, and if I'd had a choice as a kid, I'd have been deciding between him and Max Steel, because Soda's packed with play value. The robots don't have a lot of usable articulation. The arms move up and down at the shoulders. Blazer and Vulgar have rotating heads. None of their hands can do jack, and some of them don't even have hands, just nozzles, all with the necessary holes for the various accessories. The suction cups can get really sticky if not stored properly, as the rubbery plastic wants to break down. It also seems as if the material the rubbery suction cups are made out of reacts poorly with the plastic that the vehicles are made from, much like how Mego dolls of the 70s have the rubbery arms that tend to melt against the torso over time. A Robo Force figure left in this vehicle resulted in a permanent melt ring in the bottom of the toy. In the era of Garfield's suction cup plushies, adding a suction cup to anything was gold, and being able to stick your Robo Force robots all over the place was probably a lot of fun. The vehicles aren't much to write home about. Two of them are essentially the same toy. Similar to the Mattel Secret Wars strategy of having a good and bad version of each vehicle, Robo Force has the Robo Cruiser and the Dread Crawler. These amounted to white and black plastic sleds with the bad guy's capture claw at the front and the good guy's capture claw at the back. Both were equipped with an interesting electronic gimmick, a balloon inside a transparent dome that could be inflated with an including bellows called the Airbot. When inflated, the balloon would press downward on a switch, activating a battery-powered motor that would send the vehicle rolling along the ground until the balloon deflated enough to release the switch and stop the vehicle. The novelty of the design is charming, but the result is a vehicle that doesn't go very far before you have to pump it full of air again. The fun wears off quickly. Ideal didn't skimp on the scope of the line, however. Robo Force's show-stopping vehicle is the Command Patroller, a massive lunar rover-looking thing that, for the sake of convenience in the cartoon, is also able to fly, which is the stupidest thing ever. The toy itself is pretty awesome. A cockpit slot holds Sentinel, the official pilot of the Patroller, but he was sold separately, of course. You've got rotating guns, huge rubber wheels, and 2 rotating compartments to hold additional robots for transport. It's a pretty sweet proposition, and the sheer scale of the thing earns it a special place in any 80s toy collection. And before I forget, yes, it also has a crane on the back to pick up robots, and the crane came out of a compartment so big you could store the flying sled in there, but more on that in a second. Finally, we have the playset, the Fortress of Steel, which also made an appearance in the Revenge of Nazgar TV special. While not as impressive as the Command Patroller, the Fortress of Steel really rates as one of the Lost Gem playsets of the 80s. With 3 levels of play, it's that playset that's generic enough that you could use it with all of your robotic or futuristic space toys. Inside, you'll find a breakaway wall, a sliding door, A throne? A central secret passage compartment for a figure to do some secret robotic stuff, I guess? You've also got a weapons rack with a few more robo armaments, an orange flying sled that incidentally was also offered as a mail-away vehicle, various laser blasters, and of course a massive crane so you can lift a figure into the air. Not really sure why Ideal was so fixated on lifting and carrying all these robots, but it's an action feature that's on every vehicle and the fortress. The top dome flips open to reveal another laser cannon similar to Mask's Boulder Hill, but what intrigues me most is what's inside the clear dome. Best guess is some kind of abstract mishmash that could be sensors or whatnot, but when I see it, all I think of is the bottle city of Kandor. I always imagine Supergirl and Zoltar living happily inside the top of the Fortress of Steel.
The rift.
Sure, you won't have a squirt?
Robo Force is one of those lost 80s properties that tried to get in on the sci-fi game, but the toy makers at Ideal were just a little out of touch with the times. You have to salute them for making some of the most plausible-looking robot toys of the period, and their commitment to innovative features like suction cups and air-driven vehicles. However, you also end up with a set of figures that all look the same and all look kind of doofy, each wearing their own name tags. Robo Force is truly 80s. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and Transformers are transcendent properties that found escape velocity beyond their 80s roots. Robo Force, on the other hand, is an 80s relic, a nostalgia memory jog. And if you want your toy collection to feel 80s authentic, you have to get a few of these bots to be a part of it. A second wave of toys that had been planned would have brought us a few more robots, as well as the human heroes of Mark Fury and Dina Strong, but it wasn't in the cards. Robo Force faded into the mist of 80s pop culture as rapidly as it had appeared. Toys with giant suction cups couldn't stick around. That's called irony.